Hello, everybody. How are you doing on this Tuesday evening? I'm glad you're here. I am Marnie Ginsberg, and you have tuned in to Reading Simplified, where our mission is to help classroom teachers or anyone teaching beginning or struggling readers how to streamline their reading instruction and at the same time accelerate students' reading achievement. We can do both at the same time. And we're going to be doing that tonight and in the middle of a series that we're doing on how to do lesson plans simply with just 3 steps and how to meet different kids' needs depending on where they are in their reading development. Tonight is week 2. We're talking about nearly new beginners. Last week we were talking about brand new beginners. Tonight we're going to talk about nearly new beginners. In other words, those kiddos who know a few letter sounds but are still struggling at the early stages. They are not really readers. Maybe they're at the level C, D, E type of reading level. Maybe they don't know how to decode. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So welcome if you're here. I'm glad to see Carleen and Renee. Thanks for tuning in. And so if you have questions about how to serve beginning readers, or if you have questions about last week's lesson plan or this week, pop them in anytime. I am here to help you guys and help make reading easier. It doesn't have to be as complicated as we've been told. Oh, welcome, Andrew. And Daisy, we're glad you're here. So, last week, what we did was we talked about a 3-part lesson plan, and that's all it takes to get completely new readers jump-started into becoming readers. And that began with Build It, which is a simple activity that we use right here, making a word when they only have 3 choices, like mat. And they have 3 choices, at, and they would build that one word. So that's the first one. Then we carry that into the skills they're learning there into an activity called Read It. And during Read It, they read a word, and they learn the very key strategy of blend as you read. And then the third step is to read material, particularly new text that they haven't read before, and then also to reread that text. So that was the simple 3-part formula. But Build It, when we only have 3 choices like this, like if we were to do sat, and if we just did this much for the students and Build It with simple words and only 3 choices, that's a little too easy. And it doesn't take kids very long to be able to move past that. And that's kind of our mission here. Where's my little chart? I can't figure out how to point to that. Where it says Reading Simplified. I got spatial issues. See, the Reading Simplified mission is to streamline things. So if we spend a lot of time camping out at Build It, we're wasting instructional time. So we're going to be talking about how to quickly move past Build It and to do the next 3 things that I'm going to recommend for you. Okay, so if you have any questions, you're just popping in, share what your questions or concerns are about beginning readers. I already know that Gay had a great question, and we'll be addressing that tonight, about how to help kids when they can't hear that last sound in a word. If it's the 3-sound word, what's that sound at the end of mat? And we can work on that. But if you have other questions, please let me know. So what I have for you tonight is in the comments. If you go there, you'll find a link for this handout. And it's 3 parts. And let me show it to you. Okay, so here we go. Do you see that, you guys? Can you see the step 1 is switch it. This is very similar to Build It, except we're adding the complexity of having the kids to do the switching. And what that requires, that Build It doesn't require, is phonemic manipulation. The student has to be able to switch the sounds in the words to change from pin to pan. And that is hard work, ladies and gentlemen. And so we want our kiddos to be able to do that because it is a great early decoding skill. And it's actually a great decoding skill that we still use to this day as mature readers. If we come across some word that we don't know, we play around with the phonemes. That's nothing bad. That's a good thing. We play around with the sounds until we find a word that makes sense. So we want our students to get that skill as quickly as possible. So switch it is an alternative to Build It. Build It is a little lower. That's what we did last week. Switch It is harder, and we want to start them there earlier. Okay? So let me see if there's any questions or comments. Hi, Lisa. Glad you're here. So you guys can see this. Okay, now look what comes next. Switch it is super important, but it's insufficient. We need to keep moving. And we need to, sorry about that. We need to help them to learn how to blend the sounds together. So there might be the word plus, and for the word to be read for read it. So the student needs to put the sounds together as she goes. Pull, and then when the green card is taken away, she reads it as plus. That's the very pivotal, super simple, but very pivotal blend as you read strategy. So those two are what's going to be involved for as our first two steps, switch it and read it. And then our third step for this very simple lesson plan is just to read new text, coach the students through it, and again, using that blend as you read strategy. That's why we have that arrow pointing that down. From read it, we carry that strategy into the reading material. And then not only do they read the new material, but then you coach them through how to reread it multiple times ideally. So that the next day they come back to you and they can reread this text, and it's super easy. That will show that they are, well, what will the benefits of that be? They'll be more fluent. They will recognize more of these words, particularly the high frequency words. Look at this little example. They'll recognize what and is and this and on and the and maybe even top. They'll build up a lot of confidence too. So that is the simple 3-part lesson. And beyond that, let's get into what a week of lessons would look like. So I think it would be neat if I just modeled a little bit of this for Monday for you guys, okay? What do you think? And again, if you have any questions for how this lesson would go down and who it's for, let me know, okay? So let's look at Monday. The 3-part lesson plan just requires us to do switch it, read it, and then reading a new text and rereading the text afterwards. All right, any questions? I don't see any, so I'm just going to get started showing you how to get this done, okay? Let me get this out. Here we go. So for switch it, we're going to follow this Monday plan, which is probably easier if I move this over here. There we go. Okay, so you ask the student to build the word. You start off with build it, which is very similar to last week. Okay, let's build the word map. What do you hear at the beginning when I say map? And so the student has to figure out first, before she looks at the spellings, we want her to pick out the sound. So it's the phonemic stuff that always comes first at the beginning stage of reading. Okay, what do you hear first? Map. Notice this is a continuant consonant. You can stretch out until you're out of breath, right? And that's good because that makes it easier for the student to separate the from the rest of the word, the app. Okay, so I hear do you hear Which one of these is Now, what if the child picks the wrong one? And you say, oh, they're not ready for this activity. No, that's great, that's fine. They can learn really quickly in the context. Oh, you know what, this is D. So let me show you, this is okay? Pull it down and say Okay, what do you hear next when I say map? So I'm exaggerating, elongating, and I'm pointing. And that's how the student is able to separate the sounds. So the student does the work of separating the sounds. I don't. And that's one of the keys for this activity, as well as build it, the activity that we started with for last week. Okay, so you heard ah. Very good. Which of these is ah? And again, if they don't know it, then you just point, oh, well, this is ah. But first, give them a chance. Oh, you're right. You got ah. Say it and pull it down. Ah. And then what's the last sound in map? Like I need to read the map to get to the other side of town. Oh, I hear pa. Okay, so which one of these is pa? And they start for this one. You say, oh, no, that's s. This is pa. Oh, yes. Pa. And very good. You read the word. You built the word map. Now let's say each sound separately for me, okay? You guys do that for me at home. I want to hear you. Ah. And the word is map. All right, that is it for the first step of switch it. That was really just like build it. Now, Gay had asked, what do you do when the kids can't hear that last sound? Really, we're going to do the same thing when they can't hear the end as if we would do it at any point. So let's go back to this and pretend that the student has gotten to this point with a lot of help from me, but now they're stuck here. Usually this one's not as hard as this one, right? Have you guys noticed that the medial vowel is pretty tricky? So we will elongate and exaggerate. So I can't really elongate the p because it's just a popper. We can't really say it long because it'll just turn into pa, which is actually two sounds. We want it to be short. So the way that I emphasize those poppers or those short consonants like T, t, or P, p, or K, or C, k, what I do is I really kind of shout the sounds as loud as I can, but I cover my mouth. Guess why? Because I might just spit on my students. Okay, so watch how it goes. Okay, let's listen really carefully for what sound you hear at the end of map. Because I'm spitting out my saliva all over to get that really loud and distinct from the rest of the ma. Okay, you got it? So let's listen to the sound that we hear here at the end of map. Okay, so that should usually help undo the trick for the kids where they're having trouble. Thanks, Julie. We're glad you're here. Notice it's a couple different things I'm doing. I'm pointing with my finger or a pencil as I say each sound, so that's a cue. The other cues are that these lines are visual markers for this abstract thing of phonemic awareness. Like, we are not, these sounds are not actually distinct when we put them together, that we would hear purely a new word. These all get kind of merged and morphed, so they call it co-articulated. So p is not purely what becomes map. They all kind of get smushed together. So it's not natural for us to have this ability to isolate individual sounds like this. And so the visual cue of these lines, these spaces, and these cards, or these Post-its in this case, is one way that we help kids get over that abstraction, okay? So usually, if they can't hear a sound, whether it's the ending sound or the middle or the beginning, we can exaggerate, map, or elongate, map. And we also move our finger, and then we show the visual. Those are the things that usually move the needle for the kids. Now, if you've done all of that, and you've tried almost spitting on them with your map, and it's still not working, it's going to happen. Some kids are, particularly the really young ones, or those that have some weaknesses in phonemic awareness, if they still don't get it, okay, that's going to happen, well, then just say, well, I hear at the end of map. Do you hear that at the end of map? And that is your last resort, and they will get it. They'll say, oh yeah, I hear that. And you say, okay, which one of these is? So you've done the hard work of separating it. Now they still can do the next activity of choosing the letter sound. So that's the second step. Is always the first step is isolating the sound. The second step is figuring out which spelling or letter sound matches. Okay, very good. So that was an answer to Gay's question about how to solve the problem when you can't hear the ending thing. I would think that the visual cues and the elongating and the exaggerating will solve that problem. But now we're just still at the beginning of switch it. How are we going to move from map to mad? And notice this list is really good for changing every sound in a word. That's very key because we don't want the student's brain to turn off. If they can just keep going from mat to sat to fat to rat, they don't actually look at the rest of the word, do they? But if they have to attack every sound when they manipulate their phonemes or change those sounds, it makes the brain light up more, and it's going to keep them alert. So this is a really important part of the list. Notice that about the list. And so when you make yours, make sure that you're changing all the letter sounds that you can. Okay, so we had map, and the next one on the list is mad. Okay, so we're going to switch the word map to mad. I get mad when the students are too noisy. Switch map to mad. Which thing are we going to switch? So that's the first easiest level. You don't ask them to pick, you just first figure out which thing they need to switch. We have map, let's switch it to mad. Okay, so I'm going to switch this, the child says. Have you seen this? They're going to make the wrong choice. And you say, oh, well, actually, we need the in mad. We need an in mad. We have map. We need to switch it to mad. Oh, I need to get rid of this. Again, the cueing of the fingers and the exaggeration is what really makes this work typically. Okay, that's right. We didn't need the p. What sound do we hear here at the end of mad? Mad. Okay, hopefully they can come up with d. And then you say, which one of these is d? And what if they pick the wrong one? You say, oh, no, this one's d. Okay, pull it and say d. And the last two steps of this switch it activity, every time we switch, is we check the sounds, especially for beginners. Okay, you fixed the word into mat. Now let's check the sounds. What do you have? You've got, everybody, d. You built the word mad. So that's how the switch it process goes. And then we would go into sad, and then further down the list to sat, and then to sit. Notice that we are changing the vowels. The more that we change the vowels, the better it will be. Every time we change vowels, it's like a quiz for the child's brain, and quizzing challenges our brain. It makes us stay alert. It makes us learn faster. You don't stay all day on short A if you can help it. Go back between short A and short I, or short A and short O, and so on and so forth as you continue to progress. So Valerie asks a question, and I'm going to see if I can read it. And then we'll keep talking. But does exaggerated sound may have the child say the wrong sound for that particular letter? Meaning they add at some letters. Okay, well, hopefully not. If you're really exaggerating, maybe I was a little sloppy, but for instance, I wouldn't say sit-ta, I would say sit, and that's where I spit everywhere because I have to exaggerate the t. If we want to switch from sit to sit, I try not to add that sloppy You're right to be alert for that. And if they do add that, what I call the sloppy sa, it, then you just say, well, just say it real short, okay? So this is s, and when they pull it down, if they say duh, which is actually two sounds, d and you can say, well, yes, but I think it's easier if you say it really short, d. And even when I say d, I still have a little bit of an here. It's just impossible to purely separate everything. Of course, this isn't a real word, but hopefully that addresses it. I'm trying to not separate the sounds, Valerie. I'm trying to connect them, but just exaggerate them as I connect them. So I'm trying not to add an extra So I'm trying to say, you have sit. We need to turn it to sit. So pop those P's, T's, and K's or C's, any letters that can't be continued, like or s. Okay, thanks, Valerie. I'm glad to see you guys are here. We've got Michelle and Sheila and Carlene also, and Nicole. Great group. Okay, so you would go through the list as much as you can handle in the session based on kind of the motivation and how much time you have in your classroom. So I gave you what I would expect a fairly new beginner would be able to handle, but if you can't do all that, don't worry about it. It's more important to keep the motivation high and switch rapidly between activities. So that is one secret to make these lessons go well. Okay, so that was switch it, and now we're going to move into read it. We did read it last week, but it's still going to be important for those beginners because blending is so hard. So let's look at what's on the list for Monday. Got some of the same letter sounds. So they would see this word. They would see it, but not. I would not read it for them. I'd say, let's read this word, okay? I don't know if you can see that. Okay, what is our word? Put the sounds together, the first two sounds together. What do you have? And they say, and then they say, ah. Have you seen that happen? And they get stuck at, ah. And you say, put them together, and they say, ah. they're not really able to blend it, right? That's why they're at this level. Okay, that's fine. You can coach them through the blend as you read strategy. Well, when I say these two together, I hear ma. Can you copy me? Ma. What do you see? Ma. And then d. Mad. They can usually blend when they're seeing the last sound. Just the first two that are the hardest. So that is how you coach them through the blend as you read strategy, which is so important for the beginning kids or anyone who's struggling. And we do it here and read it, but we also carry it down into guided reading. Notice how I have that, that arrow. Sorry about that, you guys. In our lesson plan, there's that on the first page, there's that arrow, because blend as you read is such a pivotal part of how to make readers really quickly. We're teaching this blend as you read strategy in Read It, but then we're also carrying it down into guided reading. This is the key #1 strategy you want your kids to get. Okay, so the student has read the word. Now you say, oh, great job reading the word. Mad. Now let's write the word, okay? So when you write it, I want you to say the sounds as you write it. So the student says each sound separately. D. You wrote the word mad. Like, I'm not mad about that at all. That was a great job. And the last step is both the teacher and the student, or at least the student, if depending on whether you have a dry erase board for your word, then they erase at the same time. Okay, let's erase the word mad and say each sound as we do it. D. And that's it for Read It. It's pretty simple. The amazing part of it is in the blend as you read part. So give that a try and only do a few words for Read It because that's enough to give them a handle of how to do blend as you read. Then you move them into reading a real text. Okay? So Laura says, yes, Laura, the video will be available here on Facebook Live. We won't take it down. And Valerie asks, yes, and it's more like in your culture to add the I hope that I cleared that up, but if I'm not quite understanding you, let me know, Valerie. If there's any other questions, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. So notice what we have done so far. With Switch It, we have done left to right tracking. We've done the concept of the alphabetic principle that our written language is a code for sounds. What do you hear at the beginning of sit? We have done phonemic segmentation. Sit. We have done phonemic manipulation. Switch sit to sat. We have done the basis of decoding, and we have done the basis of spelling. All of that is in one simple activity. So you don't have to do all the phonemic awareness stuff in isolation. You don't have to do phonics in isolation. You don't have to do decoding in isolation or by itself apart from phonemic awareness and phonics. All of this can be integrated with this one activity. You move your kids along rapidly. And then it dovetails very well with Read It. Notice what we're doing here with Read It. Say the next word was sit. When the student is doing the reading, they're doing phonemic blending. Sit, sit. But then when they write it, what are they doing? They're getting more reinforcement of phonemic segmentation. It. So all of these activities do lots of repetition of the core phonemic awareness activities that kids need to become good readers. Phonemic segmentation, phonemic manipulation, sit, sat, and phonemic blending. Sit. And the other thing I forgot to mention is, of course, all of these activities are reinforcing letter sounds. And you would want to pick word lists that target the letter sounds your kids don't know yet. And every day add in a new letter sound, or at least one, to the Switch It list and maybe to the Read It list as well. Notice here on our lesson plan, we have A and I on day 1. On Monday. But on Tuesday, we're adding in O, and we're adding in B and H. And on Wednesday, we're adding in the short E, and adding in, maybe that's it, an N maybe for the first time. Thursday, we're giving them practice with U. So this is a very accelerated approach because they can handle it when they're in the context of a multiple choice exam and they have the teacher's support. Now, I'm talking a lot about one-on-one instruction right now because it's just easier to teach the strategy and the types of feedback, but I do recommend that this be done mostly in guided reading groups, small groups of 3 to 5, so that you can meet kids' needs. Some of your kids need to be doing switch it lists like this with CVC, 3 sound words, but some of your kids need to be doing it with 4 sound words, CCVCC words like help or lamp, and some need to be doing it with CCVCC words like stomp. Okay, got some questions here. Terry says, always enjoy listening to you share such good skill for teachers of new readers. Awesome, Terry. Thank you. It's good to see you. And Melody says, wonders if in the Academy, do you have all the switch it lessons for all leveled steps? We have many, and we're adding some this month. So that's a good question, because it is hard to come up with switch it lists, and we've got more coming there in the works, and we have links to other switch it lists that other folks have created. So that's a great question. Then the next thing you want to do after you've done those 2 word work things, to switch it and read it, is then give them a text that is fairly challenging and is mostly decodable, targeting the vowel that they're working on that day. So I suggested Zach the Rat. How many of you have seen Starfall? Give me a yes or a thumbs up for Starfall. It is awesome. It's free if you don't know about it, starfall.com. And these are the texts that I recommend here at the bottom are the first 5 books in their Learn to Read section that target the short vowels. So these are great texts because they are mostly 3 sound words and do the short vowels. So I encourage you to give those a try. Great, Daisy and Melody. Yes, you know that. That's great. So the trick with guided reading of new text is to not hold back and expect them to get to a certain level of accomplishment before you give them a book. Give them a book as quickly as you can. So if, for instance, in Zach the Rat, I think the first sentence is Zach is a rat, or something like that, or this is a rat. Maybe the student can't read all that, but can the student read the word rat with your help, just like we did here? So you might buddy read, do the first parts. Okay, kids, you got your kids in a circle. Let's read the first part. Everybody point. This is a, and now Bobby, I want you to help me read that word. And you do all your same tricks with Blend as you read. What do you hear here? And you have him put the sounds together, and he reads rat. Very nice. And then you practice rereading it. You guys, we just read that. This is a rat. Point with me. This is a rat. So you do a little rereading as you go to build their confidence. And then you keep moving through the text and finish the text, and then ask them to summarize it briefly for you so that all that hard decoding work doesn't become the main purpose of reading. But don't take too long with summarizing it, because frankly, almost any kindergarten, first grade, second grade kid can comprehend Zach is a rat, right? There's not a lot of depth there. So don't spend much of your time with the summarization. Get a quick summary, and then start doing more of the rereading. Okay, you guys did such a great job. I'm going to read it to you, but I want your fingers on the words. I'm going to be watching. Okay, let's start again. Let's reread it. Zach is a rat. And so you're trying to get them to have additional exposure to print, more eyes on text time, and you are, emphasizing sounds, so they're going to continue to kind of get the concept that our code is an alphabetic code. It represents sound. And ideally, send them off after you're done with them in small groups. Send them off to work independently, or with a partner, or with the computer, and listen to the same book again and reread it several times. And even better still, take it home for homework and read it to mom and dad. And then they come back to you tomorrow, and then they show off, oh, look how much of Zach the Rat that I can read. The next day you do a new book. And this is how you can quickly get kids to know high frequency sight words while you're really focusing on decoding, because decoding is the foundation. But if they reread successfully, then they will learn the high frequency words too. So lots of time for eyes on text is the ticket for getting kids to become readers rapidly. So that is my 3-step lesson plan for the nearly new beginners. Let me differentiate this one from last week. The one from last week where it started with Build It, that's for the kids who know no letter sounds, or maybe 2. Or they're maybe super shy and super uninterested in reading. you want to start something gentle and start with build it. But don't stay long in build it, okay? If your kids know 5 or 7 letter sounds, that's all it takes. Move them to this lesson plan to switch it, okay? So this is where I would be expecting most kids to start, because most kids come to school knowing a few letter sounds. So most kids at the beginning of kindergarten or the beginning of their first year, they can probably start here straight into switch it. But if they can't, they don't know any, or they only know 1 or 2, then that's fine to start with build it. But the rest of the plan, notice steps 2 and steps 3 will be the same. Move them straight into reading. Even if they don't know a lot, you're there to help them. And the main thing is for them to develop the blend as you read approach in read it and in reading text. So one other thing I wanted to say, just a little recent testimonial about the power of this. I had a student about 2 weeks ago. I worked with him, and he could not blend 3-sound words, 3-sound nonsense words, certainly not 4-sound nonsense words. He did not have a blend as you read approach. He did not understand really the alphabetic principle that letters our words are made up of sounds that are represented by letters. And so I did this very lesson with him twice, 2 weeks in a row. For just less than an hour, I did switch it, read it, and reading, and lots of rereading. And yesterday, when I did read it with him, I was trying to stump him, and I was teasing him. I tried to give him a word that he couldn't do, and I could not find one. I mean, I eventually moved on. He read the word glint without my help. I mean, I covered stuff up, but I didn't give him any sounds, and I did not do the blending. He read the word stomp. This happened very fast for him because these things gave him the tools to become a reader. If you're in kindergarten and it's October and you can read glint and stomp, you've got it made in the shade. He's on his way. He needs to tackle the advanced code, and we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But this is a huge transformation that happened to a young man. When I first tested him, he was pre-kindergarten, just 2 weeks ago, pre-kindergarten on his ability to attack unknown words. So his sound symbol processing was so weak it wasn't even at grade level. Right now, if I was to test him again, it would be well over grade level simply because of these simple steps. So this is all it takes to get most kids on the road to reading in a quick turnaround, in a number of days or weeks. You don't have to camp out here for months. Okay, so what's coming up soon will be how to take it to the next level, particularly for kids who are further down the line, maybe need more advanced switch-it lists, and then we're going to be talking about kids who need the long vowels. So those are the coming weeks. But I think we're going to have a little intermediary event next week because it's Halloween. So I'm thinking about doing something with candy and phonemic awareness. So think about what candy you want to bring to our Halloween party. It'll probably be the day after Halloween. So we're going to be talking about candy and phonemic awareness. See if you can make the connection there. So I'll be following this thread. If you have any questions, please let me know. Do share this with a friend. I'm sure that other folks would love to get these lesson plans. Tag them or share it out so other people can find out about this. And let me know if you've tried these things and they aren't working or they are. I'd love to know either way. And if you try them, let me know. Thanks for being here. It's been great to have all the encouragement and the good questions. Adios.